You became a chef at the age of 45. And we will not disclose your age here, but that's wow.
At some point, you realize, wow, my passion could be my purpose, which could be what I do in the world.
You can start at any time in your life, work on things that you believe in, you're passionate about, and you can come out okay on the other side.
When we're motivated and enthusiastic and feel hope and optimism, we are willing to change.
Hi, from Round Glass, this is Living with Sunny. I'm your host, Sunny Singh. Today, our guest is one of our Round Glass teachers, JL Fields. JL is a vegan cookbook author. She's a culinary instructor and she's a health coach. Welcome, JL.
Thank you. It's so good to be here with you, Sunny. I've been watching you
It's,
forever. Now I get to be here. I can't believe it.
it's wonderful to have you, and I'm very excited about talking about this topic. So I have a lot of questions, but we're going to discuss with JL today all things vegan. So JL, let's start with the first area that you have not, you turned vegetarian some time ago. You were vegetarian for a certain while. You became a vegan. You became a chef at the age of 45. And we will not disclose your age here, but that's wow. That's a wow. And saying, hey, you can start at any time in your life, work on things that you believe in, you're passionate about, and you can come out okay on the other side. Share with us that journey of how did you end up being who you are today?
Oh, I love that question. And I think you really nailed it when you talked about the passion piece. I think for so many of us, we feel like these parts of our lives have to be separate. And there's something liberating when at some point you realize, wow, my passion could be my purpose, which could be what I do in the world. And I didn't grow up that way. I did everything the way I was supposed to do. High school, college, grad school, get the job, do the job. And in the midst of all of that, life happened. And one of my jobs, I worked in the nonprofit sector for years. That was my career for 25 to 30 years. I worked in higher education in the nonprofit sector. And I had a position where I was the executive director of a nonprofit that took me around the world. I got to go to amazing countries and see amazing things. And on one of those trips, I was in Nairobi, Kenya for a celebration. We were opening a safe house for girls in Nairobi, Kenya. And someone in the community brought a goat as a way to say, we welcome this house for these girls, and this is our gift to you. And then they slaughtered the goat and stewed the goat and served the goat for dinner. Before dinner, I was a meat and potatoes girl from Iowa who happened to live in New York. After dinner, I became a vegetarian, and that was in my late 30s. And then I was vegetarian for a few years, and my husband was the cook at that time. I was traveling all over the world. And so I, 8 years later, had this kind of profound experience with my yoga instructor. She was also a health coach, and she had encouraged me to kind of do this like detox thing for 16 days. I'm not really a detox person, but I did it. And it turns out I was vegan for 16 days and hadn't even occurred to me. And I was like, oh, that was easy. I'm going to do it. And I came home with the great news. I'm like, hey, guess what, honey? I'm a vegan. And he was like, you're on your own. I don't know what to do with that. And so suddenly at the age of 45, I was like, oh, great. I'm a vegan and I need to start cooking again. That's literally how it happened.
Well, that's fascinating. But when we talk and people think, "Hey, I want to become a vegan or vegetarian or and then vegan or directly," it can be daunting. It can say, "Oh my God, I'm used to all of just like say, I'm used to all of these." In your case, the transition was quite nice, but it can be very daunting for people. And what are my ingredients? Will I have enough variety? Will I like it? Break it down for a regular user saying, I want to become vegan. Is it that mysterious and daunting? Is it that difficult?
So I'm going to say the short answer is no, but I also want to say I get it. I understand why it can seem that way. And I'm going to give a little example before I kind of break down what I think could simplify it. What I mean by that is for people who are vegan or who eat plant-based, there's kind of this running joke about people asking us, where do you get your protein? And people want to get a little, like defensive about that. Most people don't know how much protein I need. They probably don't know how much protein they need. That wasn't the question. What they really meant was all of my life, I had a plate or a bowl in front of me, and it had meat in it. What am I going to eat? So I don't get offended when I hear that question. I'm like, I totally get why this seems confusing. We've grown up eating a certain way, and this is a shift. Just because is a shift doesn't mean it's hard. It just means we might need new ways of doing things and to learn some things we didn't do before. So, in my vegan fundamentals class for Round Glass, I specifically talk about what I believe makes it easier. There are 5 vegan food groups when it comes down to it. Vegetables, no surprise. Fruit, probably not a surprise either. Beans and legumes, nuts and seeds, and whole grains. That's it. The reason it gets confusing, I think, there's so many options now. You can go into a grocery store, plant-based this, vegan this, no animal this, and it's like, what? So I can just buy all these things and eat this way and be vegan? Well, you can, but there's a healthier way to do it. Or there's what I like to do, which is a little bit of both. But the point is, all of that stuff out there has almost become sound. So if you just step back for a minute and go, wait a second, got it. Fruits, vegetables, beans, grains, nuts, seeds. That's vegan eating. Then it's how do you start to turn those things into the star on your plate, the star in your bowl. And so there could be a learning curve, a few techniques you want to pick up along the way. But when it comes down to it, it really isn't complicated. It's just new.
You're saying, look at the building blocks. The building blocks are these 5 groups. You start with that. You start, and then we'll talk about that shortly. That you start doing something with those ingredients, and how can you make really aesthetically good-looking, delicious recipes from these 5 key groups. And so that becomes a very nice, easy starting point for somebody.
Exactly. Exactly. Start with the basics and then start building and get creative from there.
Jill, when I was watching your videos, the sessions you did with Roundgrass Living on vegan food, it's almost like when I was commenting to my team also. I said, when I see her in the kitchen, she's like in a Zen state. She's like in a meditative state. She's just having too much fun. Forget about the eating of it. She's just enjoying the process too much. It was so beautiful to watch you.
It's smoky. It is going to be the thing you want to put on your tacos. It's going to be the thing you want to put on your steamed veggies. This delivers.
So it's almost like it's the goodness comes from everything. The goodness in the food, plant-based diet, the very fact that you are creating, you can be, and I think it's almost like I want to say, you can exercise your creative juices in the kitchen by starting with those building blocks for plant-based cooking. It's almost like you can be your own chef, you can be creative, you can let loose, and you can experiment, right? Tell us about
Ab-
that.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you for that because I feel enthusiastic in the kitchen. I wish I could sing. I can't. I wish I could draw a painting. I can't. I do believe there's a reason they call it the culinary arts. And I feel like that is where my artistry comes out. But I have great news. I'm not, I'm not classically trained. Anyone can do that. I learned how to do this on my own because I got curious. I believe curiosity is the heart of what happens with change in our lives. When we think we're one thing and then we realize we can change at 45 and 55, it's because we got curious about something and excited. So, like when you said flavors and like missing meat, well, I mean, I don't like to talk about animals in this way, but let's just be clear. Bacon doesn't taste like bacon. Something happens to it, right? Pepperoni isn't pepperoni. It's spices. All of those spices you can put on plants. So when people say, I'm going to miss that taste, it's like, oh, you can recreate that taste. That's the fun in the kitchen. And that's where my sort of meditative approach comes to it. I go into the kitchen and I think about foods I grew up with and that I might miss. And I think, what do I need to learn? How can I get curious? What made that flavor profile on this dish that my mom made or that my dad made? And then I start playing around with spices and seasonings and ingredients, and I can recreate that. That wasn't training. That's just instinct and it's desire. And I think anyone can go into the kitchen and find that meditative place simply from tapping into their own sense of curiosity and their own desire to cook and eat aligned with how they want to be in the world.
And JL, you have manifested that because in the very beginning of the conversation, we were saying, look, you started this journey at the age of 45, give or take. You were a vegetarian for a bunch of years, then you became vegan. So your journey is exemplifies, I think, to our users and to everybody out there that look, this thing works. It made you feel good. Your body felt good. your psyche felt good. You are able to make that cooking a therapeutic, meditative
Yeah.
exercise. And so it is a matter. And then you say, okay, we have all these spices and condiments. It is just not about, hey, it's just the plants. It is the sum total of the ingredients, the spices, the cooking techniques, the experimentation, being creative, and finding your sweet spot, so to speak.
Exactly. And I loved how you just described it. It just made me think of a symphony, right? I mean, it's like one note on its own is just one note or one instrument. But it's when you pull all of that together, it's just like, this makes sense. This is like singing to me. Yeah, that's exactly how I see it.
And that kind of, you extend that, saying, hey, you know what, I want to go to the farmer's market, right? I want to get some fresh, maybe organic, and seasonal food, because it probably will be organic, it's definitely seasonal, and it's your local farmers. Now it starts extending your awareness to, look, it is just not what I'm cooking in the kitchen and experimenting and being creative. Now I start building a relationship with my food because I'm thinking about it. It's just not, oh, let me just put some chicken here, or let me put that some other dish there. I am thinking about my food. I'm cooking in a meditative state. I'm being creative. I'm connecting with the farmers. Now, suddenly that awareness expands. So I believe that, in a way, what you are also saying is, Sunny, look, this has allowed you to build a better relationship with your food, the food that you eat, increase your awareness of what you're putting in your body. And I think that's very powerful.
Agreed. And I love this, what you just illustrated. I go on Saturday mornings to my farmer's market with never with a list. I let my eyes draw me to a table and I just tell myself, think about the rainbow. And I will, and that's what I encourage my clients. And when I'm health coaching folks around nutrition, is to say, go with what looks beautiful to you, what sounds good to you, and don't worry about where you intend it to go. Pick those things that look gorgeous. Talk to the person who grew them. Get the story behind it. Then you go back into your kitchen and you look at this and you're like, wow, I have purple, red, and orange. I wonder what this means. And I talk about this a little bit in the class or in the course about being a sleuth, because there might be an ingredient I've never used before. So I might just start Googling and researching and trying to figure out what would be a great spice with this. I learn about things still simply because I get curious about that one gorgeous red vegetable I saw at the farmer's market. And I think that's such a great way for people who are dipping their toes into it. Buy produce, buy fruits and vegetables and grains and beans that look beautiful to you, and then start to pull them together and try to recreate things that you've loved with spices. And I love that connection to the local growers and knowing where your food came from and what you're putting in your body.
And I think that, as you're discussing, that we have emphasized that when you are looking at plant-based cooking, it increases your repertoire of, my God, I didn't realize there's so many options out there. Because,
Yes.
if I really look at it and go back memory lane, I say, okay, I'm eating fish or red meat or chicken or whatever that is. And certainly that's the main focus, with some vegetables sprinkled around it. And it
Yeah.
becomes the usual fare: potatoes, maybe a broccoli here or a broccolini there, or asparagus there. Now, suddenly, if I look at plant based cooking, I said, oh my God, I have so many options. When you start diving into it and you realize, my God, this world is too rich when it comes to food. Why is not
That's
my
right.
recipe so rich? Right?
Exactly. When people will say, oh, gosh, so you have a dietary restriction? And I'm like, oh, no, no, no. I have dietary abundance. I'm eating things I didn't even know about. Amaranth? What was that? That's a beautiful grain I never heard of. Kale, where I grew up in the Midwest in the United States, kale was a garnish in between the buffet at the local Perkins. It wasn't something you ate. And so, absolutely, there's an abundance of plant based foods out there that would expand us beyond that normal Tuesday night dinner, normal Wednesday night dinner. I mean, it's literally something new you could have every day for a year and be dazzled.
Now, JL, you have taught and impacted thousands of people through your culinary academy, through your books, through your online courses. Tell me about your academy, because it's fascinating that because it's one thing to write books and let the masses read it, to go online, but to be able to go to your beauty kitchen, to your academy, and teach people in person in small groups. That's pretty cool. Tell us about it.
It's one of my favorite things. I could never imagine just writing a book for the sake of writing a book. I am moved to do the work that I do. Spoiler alert, you don't get rich writing cookbooks, okay? So I didn't do it. Like, it's not my retirement plan. I did it as a way so that people could see what they could get from me, and then they can come to me and I can work with them side by side to turn it into a reality in their own home. The one thing you'll see with my books or even with my classes, it's not fancy. That's not what it's intended. I'm a home cook who became an enthusiast, and I want home cooks to be equally enthusiastic in their own home. When we're motivated and enthusiastic and feel hope and optimism, we are willing to change. And so, yeah, it has been my privilege. And it was an accident, Sunny. Oh my gosh. My mother still laughs. I got a D in home ec in high school. This was not going to be a homemaker, okay? And now suddenly mom's like, "Who are you?" And so it was not it was unexpected. And but I'm not, it's just not, it's fun for me, but it's like we need to eat, right? So why don't we eat something that we love? So my classes, I always tell people there's only one difference between you and me. You're a home cook, I'm a home cook, and then I just got a little nerdy about it and decided to learn a little bit more and write a few books. So now let's be home cooks together and learn. That's my approach. My approach isn't like, I know something you don't know, you're an empty vessel, let me fill you up. My approach has always been a coaching approach, which is simply to say, I'm right by your side. You and I together can co-create something. I might know something you might not know yet, but I am here to tell you by the time this class is over, you will have taught me as much as I have taught you. And that has been my privilege with these classes, from doing vegetarian festivals and teaching big groups of people to small classes to anything in between. And teaching is the heart of what I do.
And GL, I also believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that look, when you are incorporating more plant-based cuisine and food into your nutrition plan, your food plan, or you're totally become vegan, you'll end up eating less from packages. You'll end up eating more that is, like I said, fresh, seasonal, organic, local. It just will happen. Is that true?
Yeah, I think it can happen. And what I mean by that is the industry, the food industry has changed. The plant-based space is blowing up. And that means that there are a lot of plant-based foods that do come packaged. And so what I always like to tell people is I actually don't see eating vegan or plant-based as a silver bullet, but it is an opportunity. And I'm kind of a fan of the idea of less processed, because someone could say tofu is processed. Well, yeah, in the sense that it was soy milk that was coagulated with seaweed and turned into a beautiful block of that. So there was processing, but it's not like I think what you and I are talking about, like 16 ingredients, none of them sound like food, right? And so I think that is the invitation for people who might be eating a sort of a standard diet that's not plant-based or vegan. Some people might need to take those baby steps and buy the packaged version of what they were used to. If you ate hamburgers, go ahead, get that vegan burger. That's fine. But in the meantime, crowd out that plate. That's my approach in my coaching. Crowd out the plate. Whatever it is that you're trying to add more of, fill your plate up with that, have a little bit less of the other. And that often can happen with plant-based and vegan eating too. Maybe get some of the processed stuff, but really load up with those vegetables and grains. And as you get to know how to use beans and tofu and legumes, you'll find that they kind of push even that processed piece out. So I think it can be, I encourage permission and grace to make it a journey and not feel like you have to go all in. Like, go at the pace that makes sense for you, that will help you continue to do it instead of giving up.
Very well said. JL, thank you for a fascinating conversation. It's been absolutely awesome. And to all our users, if you need to and want to find more information about JL, please go to roundglass.com. You'll find a lot of information about JL, her videos. They are awesome. Like I've told you, I'm in love with those videos. I'm in love with the cooking. This is Round Glass, and we are Holistic Wellbeing. I am Sunny Singh, and I am Holistic Wellbeing. Thank you, JL.
Thank you.
We want to hear from you. This is about your journey of holistic well-being. If you have any feedback for us, if you have any questions for us, do write to us at livingwithsunny@roundglass.com. Thank you for watching the show. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe. We will see you next time. Goodbye for now.